Hey, Laura, I think we can start when you're ready.
Started? Okay. Um, welcome to the virtual information session on the compact residential development standards that are being proposed. And I want to let folks know some of the other folks that are other people, other staff that are on. Allison Craig, our planning director, and Kevin May, who was with the UDO team. And I believe we have at least two planning commissioners on. Um, Douglas Welton, the chair of the planning commission, and Andrew Blumenthal, the vice chair. And if there are any others, I'm sorry, I can't see all the participants, but I saw them joining us earlier. So welcome, and we'll go ahead and get started. So we are presenting information on the proposed compact text amendment. If you can put your questions in chat, if you have any, that would be very helpful. We probably won't be responding to questions by chat today, but at the end of the presentation, because it's just a few of us on, but we will be doing that. And I also think I forgot to mention, I believe we have Monica Holmes on, also our deputy planning director. Go back and cover that. So again, the purpose of this session is to provide information on the compact residential development text amendment. That's petition 2024-067, in case you're tracking that. We will also, in the discussion part of the session, have an opportunity to receive feedback, which we will take back afterwards, as well as questions on compact. And then any other questions you have on the UDO can be addressed to staff through our UDO email box. That is charlotteudo@charlottenc.gov. And that would be where you would ask questions not related to compact, related though otherwise to the UDO. A little bit of background for you guys that have been on these calls before, you've heard this. The Unified Development Ordinance, or UDO, is our primary implementation tool for the policies of the 2040 Comprehensive Plan for Charlotte. The UDO was adopted by City Council on August 22nd, 2022, and then became effective last year on June 1st. It's intended to be, and has been intended to be, a living document, meaning that we would go back and adjust it and revise it as needed through text amendments, and that's what we're doing here with the compact. We also have other text amendments that are either going through now, have gone through, or will be going through the process. So if you have delved into the text amendment, or if you want to, you will find that text is shown, new text is shown with red strike through, red underline. So if you were looking at the bottom here with development standards to a site layout, that would all be new text. And then anything that shows up in red and that is struck through would be things that we are deleting. And sometimes we're simply moving things around, and you might be able to see that. And also, as we go through a process, we typically have more than one round of changes. So we will be highlighting changes in later rounds that are in addition to what we initially filed. So a little bit of, I mentioned that the UDO is a way that to implement the comprehensive plan, and that was adopted in June of 2021. And these are the 10 major goals of the comprehensive plan. And as we are working on text amendments, we go back and look at these goals and look at all of them and try to balance the ones that apply to the text amendments that we're preparing. So in the case of what we're talking about today, you might say neighborhood diversity and inclusion, housing access for all, healthy, safe, and active communities, integrated natural and built environments, and retain our identity and charm are all things that you might look at and consider when, or that we looked at and considered as we were developing the compact development standards that we'll get into in a minute. Next slide. And the compact development standards are applicable in the neighborhood 1 place type, and this is also from the comprehensive plan. And the neighborhood 1 place type is where we have primarily single family homes, but also duplexes, triplexes, and some townhouses can be found, with a goal for greater density located near neighborhood centers, community centers and regional centers, and also close to high frequency transit. And see, these are our typical neighborhoods, but as we have gone through the comp plan and the UDO, we've defined them slightly differently than what we might have seen in the past in our neighborhoods. So we're evolving our neighborhoods through the comp plan and the UDO. A little bit about how the neighborhoods, both existing and in the future, can be developed, and what are the different options we have. We have our current UDO options with our base zoning standards that are primarily going to be used in our established neighborhoods. We have a conservation residential development option that was just an update was just approved last month. We have voluntary mixed income residential development that gives a bit more density if you are providing affordable housing. That's in the UDO. And we're proposing to add an optional set of standards that someone could choose to use, our new compact residential development option. So you might be wondering, why are we proposing this? What is it supposed to do? Again, the base neighborhood 1 zoning districts really reflect the lot patterns in our existing neighborhoods. But we have heard and found that a lot of times development in our existing neighborhoods is on larger lots, and new development is occurring on smaller lots as we're trying to provide the housing we need for our growing community. And this is a new development option that we're trying to respond to market trends and financing options for new subdivisions. And so it is just another choice that people have as they're developing of how they might develop. This fits into a larger context for updating the residential standards in the UDO. Again, I mentioned that we had completed the first phase, and that has been adopted, and that is updating the residential, the conservation residential development option, really focused on sites with significant environmental constraints and important features. We are in phase 2 with a compact residential development option. That is the text amendment that we're talking about now. We see it as being important again for increasing the supply of housing, especially as we look at affordability in our community. And as a new tool that kind of pulls from some tools we had in our previous ordinance, but also modernizes that. And then we will be coming back in the probably late summer, early fall with some additional changes that we recommend, that staff recommends, for really aligning housing types with location and adding more housing tools. So as we look at this, we want to provide some more flexibility for, say, cottage courts, and see what we can do for ADUs or accessory dwelling units. We're not seeing these tools used as much as we had hoped. We want to tweak that. And also looking at expanded allowances for stacked quadruplexes, and townhomes in the right locations. So we'll be coming back and hope that you guys will join us when we talk about those later in the year. So now moving specifically into compact residential development, if you get nothing else out of this, you probably want to know some of our key standards, and that's that 70% or more of the units would be fronting on public streets, that we have added a requirement for usable common open space that is not in the base N1 standards, and 10% of the site has to be usable common open space. We then are balancing that with a reduction in setbacks and lot size. And we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. So we're really giving those reductions, but we're also getting common open space and something that works, we hope and understand, works better with the market. And we are limiting triplexes in the neighborhood 1A and neighborhood 1B zoning districts to a maximum of 25% of lots. So those are just adjustments that we are proposing to the triplex uses as we continue to talk about uses in the UDO in the neighborhood 1 districts. Next slide. So getting into the nitty-gritty of the standards. This is really where the meat is, and it's fairly technical, but we'll be glad again at the end to answer questions. So this will be permitted in the neighborhood 1A, B, C, and D zoning districts. The compact option, again, no more than 25% of lots in the neighborhood 1A and B would have triplexes on them. And this is actually something that we have in the ordinance across the board in N1A and B, with the exception of the voluntary mixed income, but it would also apply to the base standards and to the conservation standards. The development has to include a single parcel with the minimum size of 2 acres as of June 1st of 2023, when the UDO went into effect. And we do have an allowance for parcels fronting on arterials, so that you can develop on arterials if you assemble parcels up to 2 acres. But if you're in the inside of a neighborhood, we would expect off of an arterial, you would have needed to have at least one parcel of at least 2 acres as part of your development inside that neighborhood. And then there are some areas where we don't think compact is appropriate. The airport noise exposure area, shown in purple here, that is because that's where you're going to get a lot of noise. We're from the airport, and we are recommending that this not be applied there to minimize the impact on the residents. And also in the critical and protected watershed areas. Again, these are areas where we get our drinking water, and we think that it's important to have not have the more intense development in those areas. Next slide. So some things about the site layout is that all lots within a compact residential development have to front a public street or common open space, and up to 30 of them could front on a common open space. We do have a perimeter landscape yard, or buffer, as probably most people think of it, anywhere that compact residential development abuts a neighborhood 1 place type. And that's really because what's happening in compact is going to, The lots are going to be a bit smaller and different from what you would see in traditional neighborhood one development, and it's to provide a transition between the two. That perimeter yard needs to be in common space, as not the same as common open space, but common space, and doesn't count towards the common open space. So it would not be on a lot or a sublot. Can be used if designed correctly and increased in size for tree save. And we do have situations where no landscape yard is required when you're abutting an external street. So we do have some exceptions to try to really reflect the context and the need. And when we don't need that landscape yard. I'm not going to read everything on this slide, but we wanted to, and we'll let you guys take a look at this, and then we will be posting this presentation on our website as well, the UDO website. But you can see the difference in setbacks, and I'll just go through as an example. N1A, the base setback is 27 feet from the right-of-way line, and compacted is 10. Corner side setback goes from 13.5 to 10. Side setbacks are the same. There is a decrease in rear setbacks from 40 to 15. The minimum lot area goes from 10,000 to 5,000 square feet. The minimum lot width goes from 70 to 50 feet in width, and that's at the front of your property essentially. And we don't have a maximum building coverage. So you can see there is a reduction that varies for different standards, but a reduction in those lot standards. And yet we are getting additional open space, buffers, and so forth with this development that we're not getting in the base standards. Next. So a few more development standards. We have the compact residential when it fronts on a common open space has to be 5 feet behind the property line of that common open space. And let's see, for lots abutting a public or network required private street at the perimeter, the minimum front setback has to be in accordance with the underlying zoning district. So if you have a street that has a development that is under traditional standards, and then the next development along that street is under compact, we are we're requiring that the front setback for the compact be consistent with the traditional development, the standards for traditional development, so that from the street it is all works together and is relatively uniform. A little bit more in additional development standards, the maximum height being 48 feet in compact. We do have provisions. I won't go into a lot of detail on this because I want to have time for questions, but with respect to alleys, so if you have lots on both sides of an alley, where those lots front on a common open space, the alley can't exceed 200 feet. So we want public streets as much as possible, but we know that there are times for alleys and where folks are fronting on common open space and being served by an alley, we want to accommodate that within reason. Where we have alleys that are the more traditional form of an alley, where you have a lot fronting a public street and an alley to the rear to serve it, there's no limitation on length. And also where an alley connects at either end to a public street, there's no limitation on length. Just one more standard with respect to alleys is that they are not located within the property boundaries of lots or sublots. but they again become not usable common open space, but commonly held by the homeowners association. Open space standards, again, I mentioned earlier, 10% of the site at least has to be comprised of common open space, usable common open space. And 15% of the site, in addition, will continue to be green area, typically in these districts, tree safe. And so 25% of the site is held out that way. And each common open space, we want to make sure that it really is usable. So we have minimum dimensions of at least 50 feet in all directions. A little bit more about common open space is that where they attach to, because common open space may be behind some of the homes, that there be minimum frontage of 50 feet on a public street. But we do have an exception that allows a 20-foot wide connection back to a common open space if designed with a pathway and some standards for that. Any residential lot, every residential lot shall be within 1,000-foot radius of a common open space. So if you have a very large development, we may have multiple common open spaces so that everyone can easily get to them. And then we do limit the amount of common open space that could have either water or above ground utility easements to 25%. A little bit more on the standards. We do require that these common open spaces be improved either with landscaping, hardscaping, or usable outdoor amenities. So we're not just looking at a patch of grass, but something that really is inviting for the community to use. Though some of it may be just grass and areas for folks to play, throw a frisbee, play with the kids. We also are requiring that for lots that front on a common open space, that we have perimeter trees for those lots. And for every 40 feet of lot width, you would have one perimeter tree, and they could be located. And we call them perimeter trees. Let me just go back and say that they're really the equivalent of street trees in the tree section of the UDO. So the perimeter or street trees, in this case, they're open space trees, and they can be located anywhere within the common open space. And then trees on private lots or sublots do not count for the tree requirements in the ordinance, except for preserved heritage trees, which should then will count towards the green area tree save requirements. And finally, some things that can be done with this common open space. It can be conveyed to Mecklenburg County Park and Rec. If they accept it, it could go to a conservation organization. It could go to a homeowners association. It can't be sold for new residential development or any development other than improvements for recreational purposes. So where do we go from here? We are on June 4th. So you can see we're doing community review and comments. We will also be talking about compact development with the UAC, our UDO Advisory Committee, on Thursday, and also getting their feedback. We'll be going to public hearing on the 17th of June. And if there are changes to be made, they would be made after we go to public hearing, just because of the way the ordinance reads and when you can make changes. We can't make any changes to to this text amendment at this point, but we can after hearing. We'll go to the zoning committee of the Planning Commission on the 20th of June and be requesting a council decision on the 24th of June. So later this month, we hope to have this in place as an option for development. And again, you can go to our website and find this under the UDO Amendments tab and go and look at it there if you want to look into it in more detail. And I believe we're to questions and discussion. Kevin, if you can help us move through that, that would be great.
Yeah, there's so far not been a lot of activity in chat, so we may open it up for folks to raise their hands and come with their questions. We did have one question from Brian Allenkey at about a quarter after, wanting to know what do we mean by stacked quad, to which I gave an example of a 2 up, 2 down building configuration as an example. So I believe we've got that answered. We did also have a follow-up from Paul Sagadin. Are there any changes to the driveway or driveway facing rules past the zoning setback?
Changes that we have to, and Kevin can speak to this as well, changes that we have on driveways are in the cleanup text amendment that is going to zoning committee today. So I'd invite you to go onto our website and look there for the changes that we are proposing for driveways.
Indeed. And then I had kind of piggybacking off of the slide that you had with the resources to where to go to view the text amendment. I put some resources in the chat for folks that may be with us today. Got some questions coming in now from chat. Faith asks, are triplex still limited to corners?
No, and actually in the UDO, there's been discussion about maybe making that kind of change, but at this point, they are not limited to corners, and what we're proposing in this text amendment would not limit them to corners, just to that 25% of the units.
Very good. And Brian has asked for kind of piggybacking on Paul, some information with regard to the changes to driveways. I can pull a link that take me just a minute or two here, but I could also tell you that you could also get that information on the UDO amendments webpage that Laura referenced earlier. And there's also in the chat earlier a link for the UDO amendments page. If you were to look at the proposed text amendment for 2024-033 in Article 19, that would provide some information on the changes to driveways. That's currently everything that we have in the chat.
So we'll give folks a few more minutes. Let's see, 2 more messages. What about CD or conditional district areas? So if a site has a conditional rezoning, typically most of those, well, not all of them, but for this type of development, type of area, those might be through the previous zoning ordinance, but even if they are through the current UDO, this would not affect them. So we do have, really, this is for the by right development that comes without the conditional plans. And you see that Judson Stringfellow is going to send us some comments. We'll look forward to getting those. So this is something new. So we don't really have, I think maybe Faith, that what you were talking about was conservation, where we did make a change to the conservation. And I don't know, Allison, Monica, if you guys have an estimate of how many units were in the queue for conservation, but this would be brand new. So there's no one in the queue for this at this point.
Yeah, I mean, if kind of clarifying maybe exactly what you mean, we're still calculating what units were permitted or cleared our gateway pre-May 20th, which is when conservation went into effect. So looking at those, and again, we won't know yet how many of those kind of continue through the process and actually get permits. So pre-May 20th, you had to have submitted full construction drawings, paid your fees, etc. That doesn't still, that's not a 100% assurance that you'll actually construct the project. So anyways, we're still pulling the numbers for that first batch of what we consider it's vested, meaning they have the right to kind of continue to develop that site in that manner. And what cleared gateway prior to May 20th, again, with that conservation development tool that was in effect at that time.
Thanks, Monica. I'm not sure I'm understanding Paul's question, and no, Alan Goodwin has joined us, and if that, otherwise we may ask you, Paul, to come off mute and give us a little bit more information.
I was just trying to understand where it said the 70% rule on triplexes. There was in reference earlier in the meeting, and maybe I just didn't take a picture of it quick enough to remember what it was. If it's 70% of the lot width or 70% of the facing of the building, that has to face the public right away or the public road. Is that not what I read earlier?
Laura,
No,
this is
Alan, jump on in.
Yeah, Paul, I think the only 70% that I can recall is that 70% of the lots have got to front on a public street.
Okay. Okay, sorry, I just misinterpreted them. Thank you.
Okay.
Sure. David, so you're saying to confirm triplexes can be built anywhere in a neighborhood and doesn't require driveways. So in the compact development, they can be built anywhere in the compact development. Doesn't require driveways. It's going to depend on the site design. Parking will have to be provided, and so if it's alley fed, then it wouldn't need a front driveway. It might need rear driveways. You're probably going to have a driveway somewhere to get your parking onto your site. Does that answer your question? Or if you want to come off mute and I've misinterpreted that, please feel free.
No, that's Laura, you basically got it. How do I determine if my neighborhood is in the compact arena that you just spoke about?
So if you live in an established neighborhood, you would not be in compact. This is for new development on sites of 2 acres or greater. So this would not be any existing development falling under compact.
So as a follow-up to that, if I can, if the triplex can be built on any lot in a given neighborhood, not necessarily on a corner lot, and there is no driveway requirement, as I understand, then in today's world, most people own 2 cars. So that means there's going to be 6 cars sitting on a residential street that will not allow people across the street to be able to park on the street, because you wouldn't be able to get an ambulance, a fire truck, or any construction truck down that road.
So a little bit off topic from this, but real quickly, since we appear to have a little bit of time, you would have to provide the required parking. You can provide that on street in front of the structure that you're building, in front of the lot for the structure that someone's building, if approved by the Department of Transportation. If there's not room for on-street parking, they would not allow that, and all the parking would have to be on site. So there would then have to be a driveway, at least one driveway to get onto the site.
How do I, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna ask, how do we contact we're aware of a developer that's gonna be considering a triplex? How do I get to the Department of Transportation to understand whether on-street parking is gonna be allowed?
Alan, could you look up their public service number? Is I think a good place to start for CDOT.
Yeah. Let me work on that. Okay.
Okay, we'll work on getting that into the chat, David, if that's okay with you.
No, that's fine, thank you. And is a neighborhood allowed to petition the Department of Transportation to put up no parking on certain sides of certain streets?
You can certainly pursue that with them, yes.
Thank you.
Other questions? Comments, feedback, thoughts?
I came to this meeting late, Laura, but why are triplexes going to be allowed on any lot and not contain two corner lots? That answer, you may have already provided that answer, but I didn't hear it.
Yeah, we said that is something, I think we talked about a three-phased process that we will look in the third phase to see if we're going to make changes to that. Currently, they're allowed on any lot, and we're really talking about with compact new development. And, you know, likely a lot of times that if someone chooses to put triplexes in at the 25% level, they're going to go to corner lot. That's really that number came from, but we thought that may not work for all new development, but that would not, you know, they may want to cluster triplexes in that new development if they decide to do that instead of put them on corner lots. But that is in, you know, something that we'll look at further as we go into the third phase that we've talked about, and going back and re-looking at what are the right residential types in the right locations.
Yeah, I mean, the concern I've got is I live in an old established neighborhood, and to have dotted throughout the single family neighborhood triplexes with on-street parking just doesn't mirror the complexity of the neighborhood now.
Yeah, and certainly hope you will participate in that third phase where we'll be talking about that some more.
Thank you.
Hi, Laura. It's Miles. I hope you're doing well. We're trying to be a bit more proactive with regard to developers responding to RFPs where we can direct them to different concepts, and working closely with the Urban Design Center and other planning staff there to help conjure up what that will look like there. But is there any particular type of classification, zoning classification, that you would suggest for a cottage court type of development?
We do have that and would be glad to talk to you about it after the meeting, if that's okay.
That's fine. Good. Thanks.
I see one question. Kevin's added some more in there. How will the 20-foot driveway garage setback requirement be influenced, or where can we find that information? Alan, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is in the compact development standards, yes? Do you have those open to be able to give that reference?
Laura, I'm sorry, would you repeat that? What was the question?
To clarify, how will the 20-foot driveway / garage setback requirement be influenced, or where can we find that information?
The 20-foot driveway garage setback from an alley is in the compact residential development text amendment. The 20-foot minimum driveway requirement generally for
The street.
for single family duplex, triplexes, and so forth is in Article 19 of the
UDO.
specifically section 19.6, I believe.
I believe Aisha's with our staff, so it's likely asking clarity on the compact.
Yeah, okay, yep, that is
Yeah.
in the.
I can, yeah,
that's fine.
again, we can, for staff, we can get together offline on these items. Yeah, what I'd suggest that we do is if there are any other questions on compact, that we cover those. And if not, anyone who has other questions, because we're getting some in the chat that aren't directly related to compact, staff would be glad to stay on until 1 and try to answer those questions for you. So you don't have to go to our website, but just one last call for anything on compact development standards.
Laura, not related to that, but will the replay of this be sent out to all participants?
It will be posted on our website
Okay, thank you.
and within a day or so.
Thank you.
And I saw that David Bachman, yes, if someone can grab the chat, so we'll make sure to have this information. Alan or Kevin, yeah, we will definitely give you a call since your mic is not working. And I would say anyone that doesn't, you're welcome to stay on. I know we've got some questions about things that aren't directly related to compact, particularly looks like driveways. You're welcome to stay on. But otherwise, we are going to end discussion about compact and give you a little bit of your time back today. So thank you guys for anyone who wants to drop off, and we'll go back. And for those that want to stay on and listen or ask other UDO related questions, we will do that. So how are driveway widths going to be